Hello everyone, welcome to today's lecture for Year 12 English Standard. We're going to get to know each other very well in the next 2.5 hours. So if you don't know who HSC Notes is, if this is your first lecture, I'll give you guys a bit of a background to who we actually are. We're an organisation that's devoted to giving high school students and uni students free resources and really accessible resources. So things like notes, practice exams, practice questions, and things like these lectures as well. Some of the stuff that I was just saying, study notes, lectures. We also have online forums where you can ask questions. I really liked when I was in Year 12 and Year 11, I would post my essays and get feedback from past HSC students that performed well in the HSC and also my peers. We also have some videos, we have a newsletter, we have an ATAR calculator, which always take an ATAR calculator with a grain of salt because obviously it's not exact, so you can't, trust it entirely, but it is a good indicator. We have some articles and we have, heaps of other stuff. We recently kind of had a refresh of our website, so I would definitely check it out because we have tons of free stuff there. I did see someone already asked about something about websites to use. This is a really great one. HSC Notes website is a really, really awesome website, so I definitely recommend checking it out. We also have low price tutoring that we do, so that's with TuteSmart, which is kind of almost like a branch of HSC Notes. TuteSmart, we have classes and we also do private tutoring. I'll get into that a little bit more later on. We also have some study guides, which are like textbooks, and they also have practice exams and practice questions, which are really great. And Ed Unlimited is the online version of those study guides. But I will get into that a little bit later on. For now, let me properly introduce myself. I'm Chloe Lee. It's nice to meet you all, even though I can't actually see you. I will be taking you through today's lecture. Thought I might give you just a few background points about me. In Year 12, those were my subjects. I did English Advanced all the way up to English Extension 2. So as you can see, I was I definitely love English. I also did legal, bio, and SOR2. A few fun facts about me: I love dogs, I love spicy food, and I recently just came back from traveling all over Italy, which was very fun. And there are some photos from my Italy trip. Okay, so this is a game plan. This is what we're going to do today. Content block 1, which will be obviously our first content chunk that we're going to do, that will be all about the common mod, okay, revising the common mod. You guys have just come out of term 1 of Year 12. You've just come out from studying common mod. It's a great time now to start that revision, okay? Hopefully we've already been doing that these holidays, maybe not, but this is a great chance to revise it nonetheless. Then we'll be easing into module A, because not only do I want to give you guys that revision and make sure you don't forget the common mod, I also want to kind of help you with the new term, right? Learning mod A. So you're not going to go into class and get the shock of your life with module A. You already feel a bit prepared and know what it's about. Then we're going to have a 5 to 10 minute break. Now, during that break is when I will be answering your questions on Slido. So please pop them down below. Then content block 3 will be module C. Even though it's the last one, I do find it to be a good way to, not that it's like a terribly nasty module, but it can be a little bit intimidating. So getting introduced to it earlier on and knowing what's coming can kind of ease your mind and make it a more comfortable study. Then we'll be going through some general study tips and some practice questions, which I'm really excited for. So especially towards the middle and end, we're going to have a lot of interaction, and that will be down below. So you'll see on like the Slido box. Sorry if I'm looking here, it's because I have your Q&A up. So that's why I'm looking here. You'll see below my video, there's obviously the Slido box, and then on the right hand side of like the bar, you'll see it says polls. Whenever I ask you to answer a question or tell me what you think about something or whatever, click on that, and then that's the way you can answer it. All right, cool. Now that that's done, As I was saying, we'll be using Slido today for today's lecture. We will have time, especially during, just one during, not the two durings I wrote there, during our break, but also after the lecture for me to answer some of your questions. Yeah, we will have that devoted Q&A time during the break. If there's so many coming through that I really want to answer, I might stay back a little bit after the lecture and answer some of your questions, but we do have that devoted Q&A time, so I'll use it for then. Please remember, yes, this is the big thing I really want to hone in on. What you get from this lecture is up to you. Your degree of participation will directly correlate with the outcome that you get from this. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh, I actually don't understand what you're saying, or I had this question that no one's ever answered for me before, use this time wisely. You can be completely anonymous on the Slido. You don't have to tell me who you are at all. You can ask me any question. There's no dumb or wrong question. There's only a dumb or wrong answer, okay? So don't worry. As I said, use this time as much as you can and as wise as you can. Please use this time as a great opportunity to prepare for your year ahead. You can ask about English, or you can ask about the HSC in general, or anything about high school, or even stuff about uni if you have any questions. All right, so let's start our first poll. I have some kind of stock image expressions in front of me, and I'm going to create the poll. All right, I want you guys to tell me, how are you feeling towards English right now? Are we feeling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? How are we feeling? Okay, we got a 3, okay. 3, 2s, that's good. We got some 2s. That's great to see. Hopefully no 4s, or maybe some 4s, we'll see. Oh no 4s yet. Okay, we got a 4. As I said that, oh my gosh, now there's so many 4s. Everyone's choosing 4s. Everyone wants to beat up English. 5, 6, okay, it seems to be mostly, the resounding answer is 3. Everyone's a little bit sad. It's making them a little bit depressed. Okay, 3. That's really funny. Oh, and then 2 is the least. That's really sad, you guys. No, that's funny. Okay, cool. I'll give you guys like 5 more seconds to answer that. That's really funny. Okay, yeah, 3 seems to be, I think, the consensus. Everyone is really sad. And then followed up by 4, even though I said that I didn't think we were going to have 4. Followed up by 4, everyone wants to beat English Standard up. So you're either depressed or very angry about English Standard. Hopefully I can help you with that. All right, let's start content block 1. Let's start our common module revision. So what we've done so far is the stuff on the left. We've had a full term focus on the common module. We've studied a prescribed text, and then you also likely did a related text for your assessment. Most people did a video or a website, some sort of multimodal, right? You've done that. You've likely assessed through a multimodal presentation or pre-prepared essay, different human experiences, the ways they're similar in these prescribed and related texts, and the ways they're different. We've done that. We can check that off. Now, we're going to look at smaller chunks of the common module and practice them, okay? We're going to ditch our related text. Hopefully we all know we don't need that related text anymore, and only focus on our prescribed text. Now, moving forward, you'll only look at the common module in the context of an essay, right? No more multimodals. So now we're really looking at the common module through the lens of essay writing. And that's going to be the case for every module after you do it, because obviously now the only other time you'll be assessed on the common module is trials and the HSC. So we really need to say, okay, we know all that about the common module. We can talk about human experiences. We can talk about anomalies, practices, inconsistencies. Okay, how can we actually apply that to essay writing in a way that's effective and concise? And that's what I want to do with you today. All right, so how will this affect your approach and study? You kind of need to start to rethink the way you approach the common module in general. You need to have frequent, productive revision of the module and text where possible. This is the big one that everyone kind of cringes at hearing. If you want to do well in English, and particularly the common module, you're going to have to practice. Term 1, as in last term, you didn't really have to practice consistently all throughout the term, obviously, because A, you're still learning, and B, you really had only one assessment. After that assessment, you could kind of push it to the side. However, what's going to start to happen now is this kind of started to happen in year 11, but it's something that really fleshes out in year 12. You're going to be learning a whole bunch of new content, right? You're going to be learning mod A, mod B, mod C. Your teacher isn't really going to go back and focus on the common mod. They might do little days of revision or a little session here and there, but it's really up to you now to ensure that you're remembering the common module, because even though it might be in the forefront of your mind right now because you've just, come out of freshly studying it, when you do mod A, when you do mod B, trust me, it feels like last year and you won't remember. So you need to have that frequent and productive revision. If you're asking, but what is that actual revision? Hold on for a second. We'll go through that. Okay, using the module to guide your learning, note construction, and written responses. Okay, here's that revision. We need to always look at the module or the rubric, right? Please never, ever, ever forget about the rubric. Another thing that I see very common in some of my own students that I tutor and like other responses that I've seen, something that happens a lot is for some reason, students start to forget those key terms and phrases that are really unique to the common module. So what do I mean by that? I mean, last term, you would have not stopped hearing about inconsistencies, paradoxes, anomalies, right? You're probably like, oh, don't even say that. It's cringing me out. I hate hearing it. But something that happens, and it's really strange, is once I see students start to do module A and module B, they start to forget about those key terms like that. And in their writing, they just lose it. It's not there anymore. Another thing that actually also happens, and this might sound a little bit unbelievable, is they stop talking about human experiences and start talking about themes. Because in module A and module B, you'll start talking about themes and ideas rather than human experiences, obviously. And so that's something I also see. So it's important to keep the rubric up beside you every time you're studying, even if it's just a little quick refresh, you just have a skim and you go, yeah, that's right, I remember all of that. It's so important because you remember, oh yeah, human experiences, oh yeah, anomalies, blah, 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 blah. Okay, note construction. Hopefully by now we've finished our notes for the common module, and that kind of has to be done. I would say aim, if you haven't finished your notes for the common mod, aim to finish it before you start school. I think most of you start school in like 20-ish days, something like that. So that gives you plenty of time to finish it. Why? Because you won't have time. Now we're doing revision. We're not learning, okay? Note construction is when you're learning. You make notes as you go along and kind of flesh out those notes. Now we're revising. So we have to have something to go back to. Okay, written responses. This is the biggest way to improve in English. This is the most successful kind of way to study writing responses. As I said, you're now only going to be assessed for the common module through the lens of an essay writing. So you need to be doing that, right? And you need to be handing it in to your teacher, older siblings, friends to get feedback and really be able to grow. Okay, diving much deeper into your prescribed text to compensate for the lack of related text and to broaden your understanding of it. Yes. If you didn't have that many human experiences for your prescribed text last term, you could kind of get away with it because you had your related text you could rely on. Now, your essay is only going to be about your prescribed text. So you really need to go back to your notes and make edits. Do you have enough human experiences to talk about? Do you have a diverse range of human experiences you could talk about? And the best way to know if you have quote unquote diverse human experiences, look at different questions, look at HSC questions, trial questions, maybe ask your teacher for some questions and see, could I talk about something here? Is there a human experience that I have or human experiences that I have that I could actually use to answer this question? No. maybe I should start to think about what else from my text could be used to talk about in this response. Okay, where was I up to? Oh, yes, adapting to exam conditions and utilizing available resources to maximize success. So working on your exam strategies. I cannot stress enough, as I just said, practice writing, practice writing, practice writing. I know it's something we all hate doing. Trust me, I was in your shoes once upon a time. I would look at the paper and be like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not doing any practice writing. But you really just have to kind of have that discipline over time and build it up. Now, when I say do practice writing, I'm not saying sit down and write a whole essay every day. You don't need to. That would be unnecessary, and that's the fastest way to burn yourself out. What I would be doing if I was in your position right now is maybe once a week, twice a week, writing a body paragraph on one human experience, submitting it to my teacher, getting some feedback, maybe talking to my teacher. What do you think I did well? What do I need to improve in? All right, cool. I'm going to go back and rewrite this, or I'm going to go back and rewrite a chunk. I'm going to go and write a new body paragraph and build it up, right? Go from one body paragraph to two body paragraphs, ease your way into it. The biggest way to burn out and the biggest way to give up before you've even started is to tell yourself you have to sit down and write an essay. That's a big misconception, and yeah, it's just, you're literally going to burn out if you do that. All right, so we need to use the module to guide your learning, note construction, and written responses. To expand on this, you need to have a good understanding of the key concepts of the common module, text and human experiences. So let's go through the rubric, right? I said it's important to remember it and refresh your mind by going over it. So let's do that together. Normally with rubrics, the main conceptual stuff, so the main things that are unique to the rubric will be in the top half of the rubric. This goes for all rubrics, Common Mod, Mod A, etc. And then the bottom half is usually about how you will respond to these texts. So something like, hopefully you can see my mouse, but they make increasingly informed judgments about how blah, 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 right? So it's on you. The first half, though, is usually about what you need to be looking for in these texts. So let's do a quick skim through. In this common module, students deepen their understanding of how texts represent individual and collective human experiences. Okay, we know that. We need to be looking at both the individual and collective. They examine how texts represent human qualities and emotions associated with or arising from these experiences. Yes, so within your individual and collective human experience, something that a lot of students miss is you don't just look at what are these experiences. You need to look at what do we learn about human qualities and what do we learn about human emotions. Remember, a human quality is a tendency or a behavioral pattern. So maybe the tendency to self-doubt or doubt others, the tendency to be self-conscious. Those are tendencies of humanity. It's something that's consistent across all cultures, religions, whatever. We all kind of share those tendencies. Emotions, obviously, we can kind of gather that those are more like feelings or episodes of feelings like depression, grief, hatred, those sorts of things. All right, we're going to skip down and go to the next highlighted part. Students explore how text may give insight into the anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human behavior and motivations. All right, that's packed full of stuff. Firstly, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies. We'll go over that in a second, so I'm going to not talk about that. Human behavior and motivations. Obviously, this sounds really self-explanatory. Everyone knows what a behavior is and everyone knows what a motivation is. But a lot of people don't talk about it in their essays, and it's like literally right there in the rubric. You need to talk about how human behavior and motivations underpin human experiences, okay? So how have some people's motivations led to a certain human experience? How do we see that in the text, okay? How do we see how human behavior can have an input or can influence the human experience? Those are the sort of questions you want to be answering. Okay, inviting the respondent to see the world differently, to challenge assumptions, ignite new ideas, or reflect personally. That bit there is what I like to call the why. and it's something that really differentiates a Band 5 English Standard student or a Band 4 English Standard student from your Band 6s. My students who have answered the why successfully it's been pretty consistent that they've performed well in the common module, if not went on to get a Band 6. What do I mean by the why? And if any of my students are watching, I'm so sorry because I know you hear me say the why so often. But, okay, what I mean by the why? The why is almost like the audience effect. Why is your composer showing you this human experience? It's the biggest thing by far that common mod essays lack, and it's what drops you down. What a lot of students do is tell me that in this text we see, I don't know, masculinity, the experience of masculinity, and, if you're doing Billy Elliot, Billy suffered, intense, rigid ideals about masculinity. Cool, I agree, yep, it sounds good. Why? Why did Dowdry, yes, Dowdry's the composer, almost had a brain fart there, but yes, Dowdry. Why is Dowdry actually showing us this? What is he trying to say about us? What is he trying to say about our world? Our behaviors, our motivations, our human qualities? That's the big question that's not answered by a lot of students. And I really want to emphasize that. Please do not overlook what I just said, because I'm telling you, it's not done by so many students, and you just can't, you're kind of capping yourself. I'll say it like that. You're capping yourself if you're not answering that question. Why is your composer showing us this human experience? It's great that you've told me about the human experience and you've shown me proof of it. Go on now to tell me why is he showing, or her or whoever, showing us this human experience, okay? Sorry to kind of ramble on about that, but yeah, that by far is the number one thing that drops down students when they're writing. Okay. They may also consider the role of storytelling throughout time to express and reflect particular lives and cultures. This is another thing which can be part of that answer to the why. Why is your composer showing us this human experience? The role of storytelling, okay? My composer has used the storytelling in this way. So that's me answering the role of storytelling to do this, okay? To express and reflect this particular aspect of life. That's me answering the why. So simply by phrasing it in that way allows you to answer the why, and also allows you to respond to this part of the rubric. So instead of just saying, my composer showed us this human experience, you could say, my composer has manipulated the form of storytelling to deliver this message, whatever it is, okay? It's a bit broad because I don't know all of your text that you're studying. You're just going to have to apply it to your text. Okay. Remember, if you have any questions, please drop it down below, because I can probably anticipate that there are some questions that are going to be coming up. All right. There are 4 main concepts of the common module. And if you were at my lecture last year I did before you guys got into year 12, you would remember me kind of going over these. So obviously we have individual and collective experiences. We have human qualities and emotions, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human motivations and behaviors, and storytelling, as I just said. And the role of storytelling in particular to reflect and express particular lives and cultures. So let's go through them in a bit more detail one by one, so we really kind of recap them. All right, so what does this encompass? Well, individual and collective human experiences encompass the personal or private, so it's the individual, and the group or the public, the collective. Individual is pertaining to a single person having a unique and or relatable experience. Collective is pertaining to multiple persons sharing a common experience. Both are interrelated and invariably impact one another. The example I like to give is you all went through prelims, right? At the end of year 11, you all did your prelims, but the way you performed in prelims and the way you felt about prelims is completely different to the way your best friend or your friend group or whoever went through prelims and felt about prelims, okay? So the collective human experience was you all going through prelims. Your individual experience of prelims is different person to person. That's a great way to look at your text, okay? They're all positioned in the setting, the world space, whatever your text may be, but they all respond to the world space and they all feel the world space differently. All right, so when we're looking at the individual, we're really focusing on attitudes, beliefs, ideologies, personalities, values, perspectives, and philosophies, and not only of theirs, but how others' attitudes, beliefs, ideologies affect them, okay, and how they're responding to it. If we're looking at the collective, we're looking at social norms, worldviews, responsibilities, and institutions. Obviously, it's we're kind of zooming out, right? It's on a greater scale. Both, nonetheless, we're still looking at identities, worlds, contexts, and of course, experiences. All right, human qualities and emotions. Responses and reactions to the human experience, okay? As I said, when you look at human experience, you need to look at what human qualities and emotions that we learn and we ascertain from looking at this human experience in your text, okay? So the qualities encompass broader characteristics. Those are those tendencies that I was talking about, or patterns of behavior. Emotions, they refer to more specific responses, such as feelings. It can be those we relate to, we are unfamiliar with, we actively overlook, and or are afraid of acknowledging, okay? It can be broad spectrum. It can be whatever. It's really relevant and specific to your text. What's important, though, is that you are answering what are the human qualities and emotions we see through this human experience. That's the bottom line. All right, so what are qualities? Things like compassion, heroism, bravery, loyalty, maturity, imagination, rebellion, ambition, courage, independence, empathy. They're patterns of behavior. We can express empathy. It's not really a feeling. We don't really feel empathy. Emotions, however, happy, anxiety, anger, disgust. Okay, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you can see the difference. I would even go as far to say quality, try to make it even more about tendencies. Okay, so as I said before, things like self-doubt, things like self-consciousness, things like holding a grudge against others, things like having that other view. Meaning that when we see people that are different to us and don't look the same or don't act the same, we label them the other and we immediately feel some animosity towards them or trepidation towards interacting with them. That's a tendency. You see how holding a grudge isn't an emotion. It's a tendency of humanity to do that. Those are the things that you want to be able to see in your prescribed text. They're difficult, I understand, but that's what we mean now by really making our analysis complex and bringing out those more complex parts of your prescribed text. If I say related text moving forward, I mean prescribed text. I'm going to have to force myself to not muck up and say that though. All right, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human behavior and motivations. Human motivations and behaviors are inherently complex. This simply means it is not always straightforward how and why someone thinks, acts, or behaves a certain way. Yes, the best example of this complexity is if you have and this is very common in your common module text, you'll have a central character or central characters who act against the societal norm, okay? And on the surface level, you look at that and you think, okay, but why would you act against the social norm if you could be bullied, if you could be murdered, if you could be imprisoned? Why would you? So it's a paradox, okay? We're starting to bring in that terminology. But the whole point of a paradox is when you unpack it and you go more deep and more further, you start to understand it. Oh, well, the reason why they do that is because it's their only source of happiness. Or maybe they're fighting for what's right. Or whatever it may be. On the surface level, you look at it and go, okay, why would someone do that? But then you unpack their motivations, see? And then it starts to make more sense, okay? So I basically just described what a paradox is. But I wanted to also bring in motivations. So motivations are the driving forces that determine human actions. As you can see, as I just said, it's really important to consider motivations when you're looking at anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies, because specifically with paradoxes, they help justify the paradox. When we initially think, okay, but why was my character doing that? That doesn't really make sense. You look at their motivations and you think, oh, okay, that makes better sense now. Behavior, it refers to how the humans act on those motivations. Don't confuse behavior with a human experience. A human experience can be shared. even if it's individual. What I mean by that, because I know that might sound confusing, is let's say I'm going through the human experience of grief. It's something everyone can go through, okay? But the way I personally go through that human experience depends on my behavior and motivations. So even if it's my individual experience of grief, we all can individually go through grief. But a lot of people confuse it with behavior. No, the way I experience that human experience is different. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm sure you guys will let me know in the Slido. Please do, and I'll unpack it some more. So motivations determine behavior, and behavior is determined by motivations, as we just spoke about. Anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies in human behavior and motivations. So anomalies are something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected, right? Like an outlier in math. Paradoxes, a person or thing that combines contradictory features or qualities. As I said, the best way we can look at this is if you have a character who goes against social norms. You look at that at the surface level and think, why would someone want to go against social norms? Wouldn't that mean that, they could be harmed in some way? But then you look at their motivations and behavior and you think, okay, now it makes more sense. That's a paradox. Inconsistencies is something which fails to remain constant. So, do you have a character who changes their behavior, changes their motivations at some point in your text? They're an inconsistent character, okay? It's easy to look at, for example, I'll do Billy Elliot because I know a lot of people study Billy Elliot. It's easy to look at Billy's father as inconsistent, right? Because he changes the way he is and becomes more tolerant. However, you could also look at Billy as an inconsistent character. So please don't forget that, because he also changes. He becomes more tolerant of his father in the same way his father becomes more tolerant of him. So yeah, don't always go for the obvious choice. There is also try to look for inconsistencies across all your characters. Okay. Note, even though these sound like the nastiest concepts, they are basically saying, hey, human experiences are complex. Yes. And ultimately, it's a really good idea at the end of your essay to try to relate what you've been talking about in your thesis to the idea that this shows us human experiences overall are complex, intricate things. Okay, or humanity as a whole is fragile and complex and intricate and all those kinds of great words we love to use. Try to relate it to that idea because Nessa loves that. And your marker will, imagine they have like a check in their, a tick in their mind and they go, yes, yes, yes. Any question you get asking you to discuss the complexity of an aspect of the human experience, you can use 1, 2, or all 3 of these concepts to formulate your response. Yes. I have had students ask me, should I do 1 body paragraph on anomalies, 1 on paradoxes, 1 on inconsistencies? It's my belief that no, I don't believe you should do that. What I think you should do is have your human experience in each body paragraph, whether that be a theme-based paragraph where you have a main theme and you look at a human experience within it, or it's just a human experience paragraph where you focus on one human experience. If that doesn't make full sense, we're going to go into paragraph structure in a little while, so hold off on that. But going back to what I was trying to say, what you should do is try to make links to 1 or 2 of these in each body paragraph. Okay, so here in this human experience, we see this anomaly and this paradox. And then in this body paragraph, with this human experience, we see these inconsistencies and these anomalies. We just see these inconsistencies. Try and do it all throughout rather than distinctly, because your marker wants to see that you can see these across your text. It's not just in one human experience, I see an anomaly. All right, so to give you better examples relevant to your text, Harry in Past the Shallows, who is afraid of water and does not share a love for surfing like his brothers, oh my gosh, what is happening to my reading today? His brothers Miles and Joe do. Okay, he's an outlier. He's different from the rest. Paradox, Danforth, a judge in Puritan society who is antagonized and eventually misjudges people in the crucible. Doesn't make sense at the surface level, but when you unpack it, you start to understand his motivations and see why. An inconsistency, Jackie, motivated by his care for his son, changes from rejection to acceptance towards Billy's passion for it. ballet. Spoke about that and how Jackie, Billy's father, for those of you who are doing Billy Elliot, can be an inconsistent character. All right. The role of storytelling to express and reflect particular lives and cultures. All right, so we're looking at storytelling as an agent for communication, okay? It's basically the medium to deliver a message to us. Storytelling is the use of stories and narratives shared as a means to instill moral values. It provides a window into experiences that may or may not align with our own. Yes, if they align with our own, meaning they're human experiences that are something we're familiar with, they could teach us about ourselves. If they're a human experience we've never felt before and it's something we weren't even really aware of, it teaches us empathy and it allows us to learn about different worldviews and learn about different kinds of people. Culture, and this is really relevant for your next module, so keep yourself reminded of this. Culture are the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. This includes experiences shaped from social class, gender, nationality, race, and lifestyle. All right, so these are not just abstract concepts. You need to apply them to your prescribed text. Yes, as I've been mentioning, all throughout your essay, you need to talk about all these things that we've just spoken about. I'm not just doing it kind of for the fun of it. As I said, we're approaching this through essay writing, so let's get serious now. We need to apply all those concepts to our essays. So begin to ask yourself questions like, for individual and collective experiences, what are some of the individual and collective experiences represented in my text? Do I have enough to answer a diverse range of questions? Questions about form, questions about a specific type of human experience. So for example, if you're doing Billy Elliot again, you could be asked about gender. If you're doing Past the Shallows, you could be asked about family and family bonds, kinship, stuff like that, okay? If you're asked about that, do you only have one human experience you could talk about, or could you have 2 or 3 or 4? Those are the sorts of things that you want to start doing. You can see now the importance of practice writing. Not even just practice writing, but responding to questions, different types of questions and kind of picking up the different kinds of questions you could be asked and ensuring that you're prepared for the different questions you could be asked. Okay, for human qualities and emotions, you want to start to ask yourself, what human qualities are being displayed in my texts? And I'm going to expand on that. What human qualities can I see within each of these human experiences that I want to talk about? Are any of these qualities reaffirming or challenging expectations? If so, what are those expectations? In what ways does your prescribed text explore emotion and or evoke an emotional response? Okay, cool. For anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies, you want to start to ask yourself, what are some of the human motivations explored in your text? Can this help justify some of the paradoxes? What behaviors have emerged from those motivations? Can you identify how any of them, I don't know what I meant to say there, but I think I mean to say now, underpin or justify anomalies, paradoxes, or inconsistencies? Role of storytelling to express and reflect particular lives and cultures. You want to ask yourself, how does your text use narrative to represent certain lives and cultures? Why is your text sharing this narrative? What is its significance? I don't want to go on about this too much because it was asked last year for an English Advanced, so I'm not sure if they would ask you. Don't take my word for this fully, but something to just stay aware of. A lot of students, in my experience, do not look at form for the common module. They do, I see it the most in Mod B. A lot of students and like responses I get, they look at form a lot in Mod B because your teacher will tell you to focus on it a lot. However, in the common mod, a lot of students don't look at form. What do I mean by form? Form is the construction of your text, okay? So you're used to things like your literary devices, and usually, you know, when you're analyzing a text, you'll say through the use of a metaphor, through the use of polysyndeton or whatever it is. Form is the bigger things that when you zoom out of a text, it's things that, and this is how I always like to describe it, don't just occur on one page, on one line in that one sentence. So A simile, right? It's on page 12. It's on this line. She was as fast as a lion. Okay, it was a really awful one. It's the first thing that came to mind, but you can see how that's a simile. It only occurred on that page in that line. Form are the bigger ones, like setting, characterization, the way your character develops through your text, costuming, dialogue, all the big ones. The ones that setting, as you can see, it doesn't just happen in one line. It's usually revisited all across the novel, so it has a greater significance than just one simile. That's form. In their English Advanced, I know you guys are English Standard, but no one really, even for English Advanced, looked at form for the Common Mod. People just look at human experiences and that's it. So when they got asked about it in last year's HSC, some people who hadn't prepared were kind of stumped and were thinking, oh my gosh, how do I talk about form here? So why am I saying this? Because this one here, when you're looking at the role of storytelling, storytelling refers to the craft of writing, not to, if anyone knows that that's the name of Module C, I don't want to talk about that yet, but that's what it's referring to, right? And that craft is really about the forming of a story, form, okay? So don't phrase your essay entirely about form, but definitely bring it in. Because again, it's one of those things that as a marker, when I see a student's sophisticated in their writing and talking about that, it's like a tick. In my mind, I'm going, yeah, I really like this. All right, let's keep going. We went over this, the power of storytelling effectively to invite the respondent to see the world differently, challenge assumptions, ignite new ideas, or reflect personally. This is all about the audience impact, okay? This is the why that I was talking about before. Use these different aspects of audience impact to help you come up with the why. Think, is my text making me see the world differently? Is it, oh yeah, it is, in this way, in this way, in this way. I can form those together to come up with my why. My text is making me see the world differently, okay? That could be part of your why. Is it also making you challenge assumptions or any of the other ones? Okay, so yeah, if going back to what I was saying about the why, if you're kind of still thinking about it and maybe still struggling with that idea, start here. I would literally, if I were you, dot point, write down, okay, see the world differently. Oh yeah, my text does in these ways. Ignite new ideas. Yeah, it does in these ways. And you can start to kind of form the why. A big thing to also note is that why. I'm sorry, I know I keep saying it. As I said, my students hate me for it as well, but it is the really important thing that you want to talk about. But yeah, that why will change essay to essay. Why will it change? Because you'll be asked about different things. Sometimes in a question, they can literally ask you something like, how does your text ignite new ideas? If your why has only answered see the world differently, you're going to be a little bit stuck, okay? It is quite easy, I'm not going to lie, it is a little bit easy just to shift it in new phrasing and effectively say the same thing, but you have to be used to doing that. So yeah, I would, and odds are your text kind of responds to all of these dot points. It's very rare that your text, only does one. You just need to be able to phrase it in a way that responds to each one. So how's your text see the world differently, challenge assumptions, etc., etc. All right. This is another thing. You need to have at least 3 quotes under each rubric concept, okay? If a quote can be used for more than one rubric concept, use it, okay? For many. Work smarter, not harder. All right. I know I spoke about how you can structure your essays, and now we're at it. So one way you can do it is to have both individual and collective human experiences that you're looking at. So here you can see I and C is obviously individual, collective, body paragraph 1, individual, 2, collective, 3, individual and collective. How did I do it for my HSC? This might sound a little bit confusing, but the way I did it is in my body paragraph 1, I would look at a collective human experience and then the individual human experiences within that, maybe 2 or 3, and how these individual human experiences responded to this greater human experience. That's the way I did it. That's a different way you can do it. What was I going to say? Yes, another thing, a little side note, another thing you can do is look at a theme and then look at the human experiences within that, okay? Rather than only looking at a human experience in a body paragraph. So let's say I do a body paragraph on Billy Elliot's masculinity, okay? That's my first human experience. Rather than looking at his human experience of masculinity, my theme could just be gender roles and social ideology. And then I look at how his human experience of masculinity has responded to that. Either way is fine. You can just do straight out just the human experience, or you could look at a theme and then the human experiences that go along with that. Either way, you can do well. It's just kind of finding what works for you. All right. Second thing is if you're asked about qualities and emotions, you can do one body paragraph on qualities and one body paragraph on emotions, and then one body paragraph on both. You could also do both in each, which is probably what I would actually suggest more now, having a think about it. I would suggest trying to make links to these in each of your, sorry, I'm just turning on the aircon because it is Sydney and it is really hot. Yes, you try to make links to those in all three of your body paragraphs. All right, anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies. Again, yeah, I'm actually going to veto this one as well. Sorry, guys, if you've got like the slides up in front of you. Do all three of these, or at least one or two of them, in each body paragraph, okay? So body paragraph 1 could have anomalies, paradoxes, body paragraph 2, paradoxes, inconsistencies. I said that before, hopefully we remember. The role of storytelling, if you're asked about it, you need to obviously talk about it in each of your body paragraph. Okay, so this is a sample application. Again, I chose Billy Elliot because it's the most common one. It's, yeah, the one that the majority of people do. So you could have your introduction being around 150 words. I could have an individual experience body paragraph on gender, and then a collective one on acceptance, and then combine them and look at nationalism. All right, and then my conclusion. As you can see, I still use themes to structure the essay, but have given them a module-tailored focus to ensure that the essay will ultimately respond to the question with text and human experiences. Yeah, these are themes, right? Gender is a theme, acceptance is a theme, nationalism is a theme. You can experience gender and you can experience acceptance, but masculinity is more specific and it's more relevant to the text, okay? So that would be the human experience rather than gender. Because gender is very broad and vague, but masculinity, you can see how that's really specific to Billy Elliot. If you're studying Billy Elliot. For those of you that aren't studying Billy Elliot, he basically kind of challenges ideals surrounding masculinity, right? He really wants to pursue ballet, and everyone around him kind of tells him, no, boys don't do ballet, that kind of thing. So he's challenging masculinity. You can see how that's really specific to him rather than just gender, which is really broad. So my theme is gender, but in that body paragraph, I will relate it to that individual experience of masculinity. All right, so yeah, these are the different prescribed texts that we have. Hopefully we're really familiar with that. We should be. Okay, you can think about, research, make notes on, or write about themes, context, characters, scenes, setting, rubric concepts. And I'll go as far to say you must make notes and you must write about all these things, okay? Don't just write about one of these things, you need to write about all of them within your text. Oh, sorry, not your text, your essays. So it's not like you have one character body paragraph and then one theme body paragraph and one on context. Obviously, these are the elements that make up a good essay. All right, so introductions. Here is a really solid introduction framework that really you can use across all the modules in English, and even most, if you're doing a HSC subject, you can use this structure. So first sentence is a thesis. Remember, your thesis is only one sentence. Your thesis must do a couple things. Obviously, respond to the question, okay? It should not use the words of the question. If you're asked a question that says, to what extent, I should not see in your thesis, to a great extent, not in English, okay? If you do a HSC subject, that works perfectly. If it's someone that does legal studies, yeah, sure, go ahead. However, in English, no. If I see, and this is coming from my marking point of view, if I see you kind of regurgitating the words of the question, already I'm kind of, they need to change that, okay? Second thing is obviously you need to introduce your thesis or your through line. So the best way I like to explain this is if you were asked the question, and if you've been to my lecture before, you know I use this example a lot, but if you were asked the question, ice cream is yummy. Oh, is ice cream yummy? And then body paragraph 1 is chocolate ice cream is yummy, so therefore ice cream's yummy. Body paragraph 2 is vanilla ice cream's yummy, so therefore ice cream's yummy. And then, I don't know, mint ice cream, right? You can see how even though each of my body paragraphs talks about something completely different, so chocolate, vanilla, I think, and then mint, they're all different, but you can see there's still that through line. I'm still talking about ice cream. I know that sounds really weird, but relating that back to the common mod essay, you need to have that through line that connects each of the body paragraphs. And I know that's really difficult because sometimes you look at a question, you go, okay, what are the arguments I could use here? Yep, I could use this one, this one, this one. You need to then go, okay, but how am I going to join them together? That's your thesis, okay? That through line. And then the second sentence, you can introduce your text. You can also introduce it in your thesis. You can say, you know, Stephen Dalledry's Billy Elliot does this. That's fine. I like to do it in the second sentence. Doesn't really matter. And then apply your personal thesis to your text. You can also give some context, okay? A little bit of background context. Now, with context, be really careful. Another thing I see in a lot of students' writing is they talk about context unnecessarily. I don't mean that they're bringing up context when you shouldn't. I mean, they're bringing up context, but it's not relevant to what they're talking about. If I was writing about Billy Elliot, I'll keep going with Billy Elliot, and I was not talking about gender or masculinity or anything like that at all, but then in my introduction, I said, you know, Billy Elliot emerged during a period of where society began to grapple with and challenge ideals surrounding masculinity and gender and ideas of surrounding the equality of the sexes, okay? I know that was really clumsily worded. I just came up with it on the spot. If I was talking about all of that context in my introduction, but then didn't really talk about gender and masculinity in my essay, you can see, from my perspective as a marker, you start to think, is this really relevant though? Like, you're telling me all this about the context. I want the context that's relevant to your arguments. So a little side note, that's another thing I see marking. Talk about context for sure, but make specific links to your argument. Context shouldn't just be a blanket statement where you talk about, you know, Dalledry came from this time or your composer came from this time. You need to make it specific to your argument. Context needs to be working for you. Okay, then you want to signpost your arguments and provide further details about your argument. So here you're literally introducing your arguments and relating them to your thesis. A great way to do this, and the way I would typically do this, is let's say I've said my thesis, I've introduced my text and introduced the context that's relevant to that. I can then go off and say, my composer makes this most evident through these human experiences, this, okay? Something like that, where you can say that this is seen or this is proven in these human experiences. Then you can also relate back to context and bring in the purpose and the audience. Your last sentence is the why, okay? Your audience impact. Tell me why. What is the ultimate goal of your composer? What are they trying to say to you or show you, okay? Your why. In every English essay, try to make your last sentence of your introduction the why or the audience impact. Your audience impact will change module to module. Don't worry too much about that now. We'll talk about that when we get into module A, but you'll also start to figure that out as you go through English. But yeah, just know it should mostly be it should be responding to what is the audience impact. Okay, so we've done section 1, we've covered it. That's all I'm going to touch on for section 1 of the exam, meaning the essay. I'm now going to look at short answer questions. If you still have questions about something I said, or I didn't quite touch on something that you wanted a response to, Slido, okay? Ask me in the Q&A, and then during our break time, I will cover it. All right, so Section 1 is your short answer questions. Hopefully this isn't a shock to everyone. We should all know this. You can be asked a question that's 3 marks. I haven't really seen a lot of 2-mark questions. 3 marks all the way up until even honestly like 8 or 9 markers I've seen before, but usually it's within the 3 to 7 mark range. If you're asked a 3 to 4 mark question, it's usually 1 paragraph. If it's a 6 to 7 or even above a 5 mark question, and meaning if it's a 5, depending on what the question is, you could do 2 body paragraphs, okay? But if it's a 6 and up, definitely 2 body paragraphs. And a thesis statement. So thesis statement, 2 body paragraphs, and maybe a line of conclusion, but you don't really need it. All right, so if it's a 3 to 4 mark question, here are your steps. You have your concept statement where you're responding to the question and introducing the main idea of the body paragraph. You introduce the text and your evidence, and you analyze that evidence, and you keep analyzing depending on the mark range, and then you link back to the main point. The biggest thing I can say for your short answer questions, because I think a big thing with a lot of students is that they find that they're repeating themselves over and over with just different evidence. So if you have an image of, I don't know, someone getting bullied, and this is really generic and simple, don't say this, but let's say your idea was bullying is wrong. The composer is showing us that bullying is wrong. Let's say I picked out different elements that showed that. I could feel like I'm just repeating myself by saying that this shows us that bullying is wrong. And then this shows us that bullying is wrong. And then this shows us that bullying is wrong. That's something I see a lot. A way to combat that is build up to your final answer. So if I'm trying to say that bullying is wrong, maybe I could draw out, maybe the central character in the image is crying or like really depressed or something. And I could say that here we see the emotions of someone who's being bullied. And then maybe I see the bully and I see what they're doing, and I can say, here we see the bully and the motivations behind their bullying. And then we see maybe bystanders and they're shocked. And then I can ultimately build up and say, along with these other two characters' expressions, we can see by the facial expressions and the body language that bullying is wrong. I know that was really generic and really weird, but you can see I built up. I didn't just say bullying's wrong, bullying's wrong, bullying is wrong. I said we see how bullying affects someone, we see the person that's bullying, and then we see everyone else's expression, and that shows us that bullying is wrong. And that's a good way to not repeat yourself. Okay, for a 6 or 7 mark question, as I said, you have your line of, your thesis, sorry, I was looking for the word there. Then your first body paragraph, your second body paragraph, and then maybe one line of conclusion. But you honestly don't really need that, especially if you're looking at the clock and you see you don't have enough time. Don't worry, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. General rule, remember the amount of evidence you use or the amount of quotes, if it's a written text, is the number of marks minus 1. So if it's a 5 mark question, you have 4 pieces of evidence. If it's a 3 mark question, 2 pieces of evidence. All right, so quickly identifying techniques appropriate to the media is essential. Yes, don't forget that if you have a visual text, so one of these, you're going to be looking for visual techniques. If you're doing a visual text, don't use imagery. I see that a lot. Try to not use imagery because imagery means that they're creating an image in the reader's mind. That's what imagery is. If I've created the image for you on paper, like if I've drawn something, I haven't really left much room for you then to go and create your own image. You know what I mean? You literally see the image, and odds are you're not really playing around with that much in your mind. Written text, these are the different written texts you can have. I'm going to try and kind of ease through this because this is kind of the easier stuff, and I want to move on to the more important stuff for you guys. So, how has symbolism been used to represent human motivations? Here we see a exemplar to that text that follows this structure that we spoke about. I'm not going to go through that. You can download the slides and go through that. If we have time at the end, I'll definitely come back to this, but I definitely want to move on to Module A so we can get you guys started for this year. I did see again someone ask about websites to use. I'll tell you some more websites during our break time, but a good website to use is literally the past papers from the HSC. Go to NESA and look at the different HSC exams and look at the different questions that they were asked for both Section 1 and Section 2 of the Common Mod. All right, I did want to do this. Now's your time to interact with me. With this image, I want you guys to tell me, sorry, let me create the poll. Oh, goodness. Okay. I want you to tell me what techniques you can see in this image and also what might their effect be, okay? So do you see a particular visual technique, and then what could the composer be trying to tell us or evoke in us by having that technique? You can literally just put, this is a technique, and then another line, and then what you think the intended effect may be. And I will wait for that. And hopefully you guys can see each other's responses. Hopefully. I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that because I think it's delayed as well. Okay, so the person who said visual, that's like there are visual techniques, but what do you mean by visual? Is there a particular visual technique that we see? All right, everyone's giving techniques, and that's great. Maybe also jot down after you say your technique what the effect of it might be. So someone said symbolism. Let's be really specific. Symbolism of what? The trees, the letters, the floor, and what's it symbolizing? What's it trying to say? Symbolism is a massive one. Okay, cool. Symbolism of what? And what's it saying? Draw audience attention. Sense of disconnection. Nice. The vector of the letter. Nice. Draws our eyes to the tree, and then that kind of heightens the symbolism of maybe wasteland or maybe the tree. Personification. Interesting. I'd like to see, so the people that are writing personification, let me know what's being personified here. Is it, actually no, I'll let you. The tree. Oh gosh, I hope that's the person that wrote personification. Sorry, it's all anonymous, so I'm trying to I have to put it together. Okay, the tree is being personified. Interesting. I don't understand someone who said that. The person who said I don't understand, maybe write a question now and I'll see if it comes up for me and I'll explain. I'm not sure what you don't understand. What don't you understand? Just jot it down for me. Dark and light, nice. Demand gaze. Colors, color imagery. Okay, remember guys, I said imagery is not really for visual images and stuff like that. Okay, did the person write? No. Okay, I'm still waiting on you, whoever said I don't understand. Just jot down for me what you don't understand. Symbolism, that's kind of the big resounding one. So letters stand out. Nice. There's really good ones here. Good job, guys. Dark and light. Salience. Nice. We've got some really good ones. Positioning could be another one. So this is actually a book cover, if you can't tell. And yeah, definitely color. I like the personification. You could talk about the personification of these letters and almost, maybe not personification, but they're almost presented as wind. Okay, blown away, and that kind of supports the idea of a wasteland. As you can see, it looks really dry and the floor looks like that deserty, cracked pattern. Where there's something about the environment, or maybe this could be symbolic of someone's mental wasteland and how they feel inside. But that could be up to you to argue. All right, cool. That was really, really good. That was really good. Now, I have another one. For us. This one may be a little bit easier. I'm not sure. Here, maybe don't worry about the intended effect because I'm not sure how well that works. Just tell me techniques in this one. Tell me different techniques we see. So try to find different ones. So maybe not just color. What are some really look at the image here? What could we talk about? And we'll see if, again, I think it's delayed. It might be delayed by like a minute or two. Gaze, good. That was like the first one that came through. I really got good job to whoever said that. Yes, if you see, it's almost like our eyes are directed around the page via their gaze. We start over here, and then it's almost like in this direction. We look at the fire, we look at them, and we look up at this person, okay? So it's almost like we're directed. Body language, nice. Light versus dark position, symbolism, leading lines, good. And yeah, the lines all contribute because they're also vectors as well as the gaze. Storytelling, yes, obviously that's not a visual technique, but yes, you would want to relate this, or you could relate this to the role of storytelling. Offer gaze, contrast, nice. Juxtaposition, framing, social gatherings. Okay, to the person that wrote social gatherings, can you see how that's not really a visual technique? You could talk about that in your response, how we're presented with what seems to be a social gathering, but try to focus on the techniques. Contrast, motif. Now, motif, you probably can't argue that there are motifs in a visual image because motif means that it's a recurring image across a text. In a visual image, you can't really have that because you're seeing everything all at once. So it's not like you flip a page and it keeps coming up as you do when you're reading a text. Like a symbol keeps coming up across the whole text. Here we see everything, so it's really just symbolism. Maybe if it was like a really big artwork and there were like small recurring symbols all throughout, you could argue that it's a motif, but here probably not. But symbolism would work. Cool. All right. I'm going to stop it there, but thank you everyone so much for both of those answers. That was really good, and I'm glad that we got some really unique ones in there. All right. I'm going to go on to Module A now. If you want to just take a second, that's fine. But I'm going to keep going because we also I want to have our Q&A. It probably won't be halfway that we have our Q&A. That's all right. It might be a little bit after the halfway mark because we are going till 12:30. But yeah, I definitely want to get that Q&A in, so I'm going to push through. All right. Language, identity, and culture. I'm not sure how many of you guys have started this yet. I'm going to assume most of us haven't because you're going to look at it this term. This unit is my favorite in English Standard, so hopefully it's also yours as well. It's, I'm going to be honest, more fun than the Common Mod. So if you're someone that like despises English, hopefully that's kind of like inspiring and helps you push through. All right, so let's first understand it through the eyes of human experiences, okay? Human experience is something we're familiar with, so let's compare it. With text and human experiences, we had a conceptual focus on human experiences. We looked at one prescribed text, and we also had a related text. I know we're not going to use that anymore, but that's what we did. It was all based on understanding what it means to be human, all right? However, language, identity, and culture, our new module, we have a conceptual focus on identity and culture. Not so much just human experiences. We're now looking at people's identity and culture. It requires only one text, and it's all based on gaining new understandings from a variety of sources on identity and culture. Both of them engage in language forms and features. Both of them examine common themes and values, and both of them explore humanity, okay? You can see how it's building on top of human experiences. We're looking at identity, which is something that we also touched on in human experiences, and culture, as we said before. All right, so the basics. This module will focus on the power of language to shape and reflect identity and culture. Sorry, I'm going to turn the aircon again. You will study one prescribed text, which you will be assessed on, alongside a range of other short texts that are relevant to what you are learning. All right, let's look at the rubric together. Language has the power to both reflect and shape individual and collective identity. That's paramount, and there's a reason why it's the first sentence. Don't overlook that, because in your analysis, you're going to need to look at how has your composer used language to shape and reflect identity and culture? Okay, I'll say that one more time because that's kind of the whole point of this module. How has your composer used language to shape and reflect identity and culture? Okay, or identity, individual identity, collective identity, culture. Okay, obviously your composer might not only be helping to shape the culture and shape people's identities, they also might just be reflecting them, meaning showing it to us, not necessarily creating it or shaping it, but just showing us this is people's identity and this is people's culture. Okay, second sentence. In this module, students consider how their responses to written, spoken, audio, and visual text can shape their self-perception. Okay, so on one hand, we're looking at how language has shaped people's identity and culture. And then we're looking at, okay, once we respond to that and once we see that, it also shapes our self-perception. AKA, it shapes the way we view those people's identity and culture. All right, so it's twofold. That's your audience impact, that second one. How it's shaped you, how it's changed you. That's what you want to look at. They also consider the impact texts have on shaping a sense of identity for individuals and or communities. Through their responding and composing, students deepen their understanding of how language can be used to affirm, ignore, reveal, challenge, or disrupt prevailing assumptions and beliefs about themselves, individuals, and cultural groups. All right, so let's break it down. Language. What is language? A system of communication consisting of sounds, words, and grammar, or the system of communication used by people in a particular country or type to work. Now, that's really obvious. Hopefully, we all know that. There's nothing too shocking about that. What does this mean in the context of Module A? Your micro techniques, so your literary devices, form. Hopefully, you remember that from when I spoke about that. And the non-written stuff as well. So maybe you're studying a film. Maybe you'll look at the facial expressions, the body language, the gestures. That's all a part of language as well, okay? So in the context of Module A, those are the kinds of things that can shape an identity or shape culture, and that's the stuff that you want to be looking at. What is identity? There's many different sources that you can look at for a definition of identity. Basically, it's what makes up a person or a people, okay? So there's individual or collective identity. It can be personal, familial, communal, generational, national, cultural, societal. Think about it. You have your own identity, but then that fits within your family identity and within your community's identity and within the Australian identity, okay? So there are many different parts of identity. Authentic or inauthentic. Is the idea of a self a construction? Do we choose who we are, or is it a result of our culture? That's something that you need to grapple with. Multidimensional, meaning that we don't just get our identity from one thing, like our gender or our nation. We get it from gender, nation, work, private, public, our relationships, our friendships, everything, okay? It's multidimensional. That's a really great buzzword to write down. If I were you, I would maybe just jot that down somewhere, because that's, again, that kind of language as a marker makes it sound really weird. But as a marker, when I read that, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to hear. All right, what is culture? The ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or culture. Or society. Throughout Mod A, you will hear references to cultural perspectives, which refers to how particular groups connected by distinguishers such as class, nationhood, or certain experiences like immigration view the world. So, us in Australia, we view the world a particular way. Someone in Japan might view the world in a different way because of where they've grown up, okay? Females, males might view the world differently. Different world like New Age religions or traditional religions, or even just all religions, obviously view the world differently because they have their own understanding about things like the afterlife and spirituality and that kind of stuff, okay? So all those cultures shape a cultural perspective, all right? So the best way to think about it is the way us in Australia view something compared to us or them in America, or something like that. We have a cultural perspective. All right. Let's look at that statement that we looked at, how language can be used to do those different things about assumptions. What do we mean by prevailing assumptions or beliefs? Usually this is relating to stereotypes, okay, about certain identities and cultures. Unfortunately, stereotypes, they're really, really common. So you need to look at how stereotypes have been challenged by your composer. What has your composer done to challenge them, maybe affirm them, weaken them, strengthen them? That's really what you need to be answering, okay? So just to repeat that, how has your composer challenged, weakened, strengthened stereotypes, aka prevailing assumptions or beliefs? You must answer that. All right. Language has power. Language can be used as a tool to achieve certain goals. Think of how it can be used by governments and corporations, of course. Propaganda might seem like a historical relic, but with the expanded accessibility of world media, texts are being created with the intent to implant an idea in your head. Learning to understand how and why texts are constructed and how they could be manipulating you is hugely important. Okay. So this is a government-produced text evoking emotions in you that evoking emotions in you that will, if successful, influence your behavior. The humorous gesture creates an image of speeding drivers as inferior, discouraging the audience from speeding, aka abiding by the law. So here you can see the way language has been used to shape people's identity. People, especially men, are going to think, oh, that's a bit embarrassing. I'm not going to speed because I don't want to be seen that way. Yeah, that's shaping my identity. I'm changing my behavior. I'm changing who I am because of this language that I've been presented with, okay? Is this propaganda? Not really. But if you look at it in the definition of using language to sway people, it kind of is, okay? Not to sound completely strange and absurd, but in the definition of using language to sway people, it kind of is, except it's a good one because no one wants people speeding. All right, so they investigate how textual forms and conventions, as well as language structures and features, are used to communicate information, ideas, values, and attitudes, which inform and influence perceptions of ourselves and other people in various cultural perspectives. So basically, what is this saying? We're using language to talk about people's values and attitudes relevant to their culture. So what are a culture's values and attitudes? How are they being expressed in this text through the use of language? How does that shape our or the reader's understanding of these cultures? Okay. All right. This is the really important part that I'm going to waffle on about for a long time because it is the most important thing. Remember how for the common module I said that the why is the biggest thing lacking from those essays? This is what I'm about to say is the biggest thing lacking from Mod A essays. So we know that we need to talk about language, culture, and identity in your Mod A essay, right? We've went through that. We've spoken about what they are. We've spoken about the key rubric terms. Where does that all fit in though? Like these are really abstract terms. What do we actually need to say? Well, we need to find the link between them. So things like this are what our thesis will be about. How is language being used to shape an identity? How do those identities then form a culture? Or how's language being used to shape a culture? How within those culture, or how does that culture then shape different identities? You need to, bottom line is this, you need to find the link between these three and argue it in your essay. So in my text, my composer uses language to shape individual identities. However, as we zoom out, we see that these amalgamate into one solid structure of a culture, okay? That doesn't have to be your audience effect. That doesn't have to be your thesis. But what you do have to have, again, is that through line, that link between all three of these. If you don't have a clear link between all three of these in your essay, it's really hard to do well. That's what your marker wants. Your marker wants, okay, how have they applied the rubric to their text and found that link? Because don't forget, I think a lot of students think that your modules are really just all about your texts, and then you have to try and go back and try and see where it might fit in with the rubric. You're trying to prove your ideas about the rubric through your text. I think thinking about that in that way will help you much better. So don't think about it in the sense of how can I make rubrics back from my text. I have my own ideas about the rubric and I need to find proof of my own ideas in my text. Okay, think about it like that. Think, okay, I think that, language has been used to shape identities and that ultimately became a culture in my text. All right, let me find proof of that in my text. Now, is that really the case? Do you already have your ideas about these three things? Probably not. Will you most likely get it from your text? Yeah, you probably will. However, are you going to phrase it like that to your marker? No. You're going to say to your marker, these are my ideas, and yeah, my text is proof of my ideas. Okay, that's how you want it to sound. But bottom line, if you want to do well, you need to have that link between these three. Okay, that's why I've put Module A analysis in the center, because you need to have that link. I know I'm really going on about this, and I know I'm probably annoying you guys, but I really want to go on about it because just like the why for the common mod, this is what will help you achieve well in Module A. So let's go through this because I don't think I covered everything. As you approach your study of Module A, when you begin analyzing your text, consider how is language used? Why? Are cultural words used? Is it from first or third person? You really need to look at the construction of the language, okay? Definitely look out for cultural words because you can see that direct link between language and culture there. What identities are being shaped? What is being said about these identities? How do we know that this is being said? Hint, hint, the language that's being used and the way it's being framed. How are whole communities or cultures being shaped? What is being said about these communities? How do you know this? Again, language. All right. Okay, so these are the different kind of buzzwords or like key things you need to look at in your essay. So your textual form, that's also a part of your language. So if you have a poem or a suite of poetry that you're looking at, if it's drama, if it's prose fiction, if it's a film, you need to be conscious of that use of language, aka why did your composer choose to write it through poetry or write about it through prose fiction or show it to us on screen via film. You need to look at the conventions of that form. So, for example, poetry uses rhyme, it might use iambic pentameter, it might use a lot of imagery, so that might help the composer deliver their message. Language structures, this can be the arrangement of the text. Some prose fiction novels have 3 parts, like they'll literally have like part 1, part 2, part 3. That might reflect the stages in the story. Language features, these are really our language devices. This is stuff we should all really know, metaphor, simile, all those ones that we know. Values, those are people's or culture's beliefs, principles, or ideas. And then attitudes are ways of thinking or feeling about something. Cool. Oh, all right. Oh, did I go back? No. All right. Language is constructed meaningfully. This meaning can represent identities and or culture. Okay, that's the link that I want you guys to make. You can also say that language is constructed meaningfully, and then that meaning can shape identities, culture. So it can represent them, and then it can also shape them. Please also don't forget about that. That's another thing that I want to talk about. Don't only talk about how your composer is representing an identity or a culture. Are they also having an effect on it? Are they shaping it? Yes, okay, they should. They must. The rubric's there for a reason, and Nessa selected these prescribed text for you for a reason. So your text really should be doing both of these things. You need to be clear and specific about this link. And these are... All right, let's push through and let's look at Module A essay writing together. So it'll be 20 marks and you'll have 40 minutes for it in your trials in HSC, and it will deal with one of your prescribed texts, as we know. The kind of questions you might get are things like this. To what extent does your prescribed text disrupt assumptions about culture? We looked at that. You need to say how your prescribed text is disrupting those assumptions about culture. For this kind of question, I would have one overarching thesis that says, it does it in this way, but then I would prove it through maybe 3 main arguments where you look at different assumptions that are being disrupted. Okay, but then you link it overall to an overall disruption that's occurring that links all three of those together, the through line that we were talking about. I'm gonna have a quick drink because my throat is going to dry up. Sorry guys, all the talking. Okay. Explain how sound and music contribute to the representation of identity and culture in One Night the Moon. Here, as you can see, we're being asked about form, okay? How language is being used to represent identity and culture. You can see that's basically what it's asking, right? How language is being used. Sound and music, both language. Drama relies primarily on characterization to create cultural tension. Drama relies on this aspect of language, characterization, to create tension between cultures or within cultures. Then you need to say if you agree with it, okay? So you can see we're being asked about language here in both of these questions, a specific element of language. So you need to have really great notes on how language is being used to reflect or shape identity and culture. Remember that link. Analyze how language is used in your prescribed text to express community identity. That one's kind of really easy, to be honest. That's literally what we would expect a question to look like. How language is being used to express identity. Really simple. All right. You have to engage with the ideas of the rubric and your text to answer these questions spontaneously and actually believe in what you are writing. Therefore, you cannot memorize an essay. Please, for me, never try to memorize an essay in English. Never, ever. You won't get very far because, as you can see, if you just prepared an essay on how language is used, but then you were asked about characterization in particular, you're going to struggle to adapt that. Okay, so the thesis. Why is it important that we learn about thesis statements? We need to know how to nail thesis statements because it puts you at a massive advantage. Because thesis statements give your paper direction, okay? They give you that through line. They tell me as the marker where you're headed with your response. They help the reader follow your argument. They are generally the first thing HSC markers will read and greatly shape their evaluation of the rest of the essay. True. As a marker, I can tell you, I know what mark range you're sitting in by the time I finish your introduction. Okay, some of you have probably heard that before. It is true. Just based off your thesis and the body paragraphs that you are going to talk about and the way you've sort of set them up, I can probably, start to gather. I maybe can't say, you're a 15 out of 20 or a 16 out of 20, but I can say, all right, this student looks like we're sitting in between 13 to 16 out of 20. Making a statement about what you're going to argue helps you remember to continually link back to that argument, which gives your paper consistency and makes it less likely you're going off on irrelevant, time-consuming tangents. Yes, and it also helps you frame your arguments in the same way to have that through line be consistent, okay? Having that thesis. Bottom line, again, is that thesis is important. It's non-negotiable. You have to have a thesis. Does it take work? Yes. Will you need to do some practice thesis writing? Yes. But you need to have it. All right. So for the person that asked about thesis writing, here we go. Firstly, you need to unpack the question. You need to understand the question and you need to highlight the key rubric terms and the key buzzwords that are in the question. You need to link it back to the syllabus and consider, all right, where in the syllabus has this question come from? Consider your ideas about the text and what's relevant. So for example, if I was given this text here, drama relies primarily on characterization to create cultural tension, I would immediately go, okay, they're asking about how drama is relying on language to create this idea of cultural tension. Okay, cool. I see that comes from literally the first sentence of the rubric. I know where that's come from. I know what they're asking about. All right. What human experiences, what themes do I know of from my text and I have in my notes that rely on characterization and how do they relate to cultural tension? That's what I would start thinking about. And then I would say, all right, well, I see cultural tension here and there's the characterization of these characters there. This is another idea that does the same, and then this idea. Okay? Then I would start to draft an answer. The first thing I do before I actually start writing is an essay plan. If you're going to do any practice writing at this stage, at least do essay plans, okay? Essay plans, if you don't know what it is, basically you get a question, you write a thesis to it, and then you just jot down your 3 main body paragraphs, or 4, because I know some people like to do 4 body paragraphs, your 3 or 4 main body paragraphs that you would use to prove that thesis and what they'd be about. And then under each, you start to build it up and write your concept statement for each. And then your pieces of evidence for each, and the techniques that you would analyze, and the audience effect, and then the ultimate overall audience effect that you're going to be talking about in each body paragraph, okay? Plan everything out. I can't tell you how many essay plans I did in my study. I would do so many, just responding to different questions. Even though you're not actually writing out an essay, you're training your brain to adapt your notes and your arguments to different styles of questions, okay? So I draft an answer. I don't necessarily mean, write out essays. I mean, write some essay plans. Check its effectiveness by mapping out the rest of the essay. Yeah, so that's that essay plan that I was talking about. All right, so your thesis is ultimately a response to the question. All right, so you need to first understand the question. What is it asking you to do? Get out those highlighters and highlight the key terms, what we spoke about. This will also breeze through because this we also spoke about. When you consider the syllabus, you need to think about which ideas from the syllabus are indicated by the question. How can you bring your knowledge of those ideas into your answer? This step is important because your thesis should be in tune with what the examiners have asked you to study. The syllabus will give you key terms and ideas that you should include in your thesis statement. If you have too many ideas about the text, the syllabus can help you streamline those ideas, or if you don't have enough ideas, the syllabus might inspire you. We'll skip this one. This is literally what do I have already that's relevant to what the question's asking. And then everything I said about writing an essay plan. All right, so let's imagine that we got this question. In what ways does your prescribed text offer new insights into the anomalies in human behavior and motivations? I would maybe screenshot this or jot this down for your own practice. So, in what ways? A method. Ways means a method, style, or manner of doing things. New insights, new ways of understanding something, original ideas, and ideas that diverge from the dominant discourse. So the dominant discourse being a common belief or common value. New insights are obviously something that's challenging it or diverging and going away from it. Into the anomalies, something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or accepted in human behavior and motivations. We remember this from the common module. This is talking about how humans act and why they act like that. Okay, so in a slightly reversed order, to answer this question, we'll need to make judgments about what anomalies in human behavior and motivations are present in the text. So what are these anomalies? In what method, style, or manner are they represented? What is new about the understanding of anomalies in human behavior and motivation in the text? Okay, we can recognize, that phrase from our old syllabus. Okay, we'll skip that one. I don't know what that meant. Okay, consider your ideas about the text. For the purpose of the exercise, we'll use the crucible. What anomalies in human behavior and motivations are present in the text? Okay, so even though not everyone's studying the crucible, let's imagine that we got this question, okay? And let's just imagine for 1 second we're doing the crucible. Even if, because it does look like a human experience question, this is more so about constructing a thesis anyway. So human experience mod A, nonetheless, it's still the same kind of idea that we're going about here. We're trying to find some ideas about the text. If we're studying the crucible, an idea we could have is basically all of the characters at times behave in ways that are counterintuitive or go against their own beliefs and best interests, which deviates from the standard or acceptable view that there is a logical cause and effect between motivation and behavior. Okay, how is this represented? Because my focus is on characters, the main way this insight is offered will be characterization or character arcs. Okay, the way my characters develop. That's how I see them deviate from their own beliefs and best interests. Okay, so I'm following that thesis kind of step by step that I said. Draft an answer. I've started to draft my thesis statement. Through characterization and character arcs, whereby human actions are represented as incongruous to their goals, Arthur Miller's 1953 drama, The Crucible, challenges assumptions about a logical cause and effect between motivation and behavior, reflecting the complexity of human experience. Okay, again, as I said, this could be a human experience question. I'm not quite sure. Looks like it could be. Nonetheless, you can still see I followed those steps. All right. Yeah. And we could say that that's effective. All right, so your thesis for Mod A should ultimately be some kind of statement about language, identity, and culture. Please remember that link, all right? You must be stating what the link is between language, culture, and identity. That, bottom line, you must do. That's how you achieve well. And then you must be proving that link by looking at different arguments. Okay, so introduction, this is literally the same sort of structure we went through for the common module. It's the really same structure, except obviously you're going to be talking about language, culture, and identity rather than human experiences and anomalies, paradoxes, and inconsistencies. So you include a thesis statement. You then can introduce your text and introduce a bit of context. Then you introduce the main points that you'll talk about. And then, I would say introduce the text before your main points that you're going to talk about. Final sentence should be audience effect. Okay, what are we learning about different cultures? How are we becoming more tolerant of these cultures? How are we becoming more tolerant of different identities? That's the sort of stuff you want to say for the audience effect. All right, for body paragraphs, 2 to 3 are fine. I know, however, some people, like to do like 4 body paragraphs, but they're shorter. If that works for you and if it's effective based on the feedback you're receiving, keep it up. That's fine. Your body paragraph should prove your thesis, okay? I see it so commonly done that the thesis is forgotten about. Actually, that's also really common in Mod A in particular, if I have to think about it now. A lot of students forget about the link that they said about language, culture, and identity, and they just start to just talk about language, culture, and identity in just a really vague way that doesn't relate to their thesis. So remember, and this applies to every module, you should be proving your thesis with your arguments. So don't forget that link that I keep talking about. Obviously, you need to have some evidence in there, and you should include, or you must include, some discussion of language, okay? Because remember, that first sentence of the rubric is, how's language being used to shape and reflect identities and culture? All right, we're not going to look at that one, but if you do want to download the slides, I would recommend downloading the slides. Here is an exemplar to look at. All right. Here's a little checklist for Module A. Here are some things that you should do after you've written a response for Module A that I've put together for you. Firstly, it's also supposed to be 1, 2, 3. I've just seen now that I kept it as 1, 1, 1. Just please imagine that it's 1, 2, 3. Anyways, all right. Does my analysis comment on the relationship between language, culture, and identity? Have I discussed the connection between the links made in the text between language, culture, and identity and the composer's own context? Have I discussed the audience effect of learning of these unique links between identity, culture, and language? Yeah, I definitely put identity, culture, and identity. Just again, imagine it says language, culture, and identity. And that it also says 1, 2, 3 down the side and not just 1, 1, 1. Yeah, but besides that, this is a checklist I would use if I were marking my own work, or if I had just finished an essay plan or any kind of practice writing and I wanted to give myself some feedback before I get it from others. All right, how to study for Module A. This is how you can structure your notes table with, text can challenge stereotypes. That's your first idea. And your text proves that in these quotes. And these are the techniques used to do that. And here's my analysis of it, and here's the audience effect. And then text provide a voice for the marginalized, and then your 3 different kind of main ideas. All right, why this table works. It's great for open book practice, especially with HSC coming around the corner. It can help you prepare structure to adapt to the question in the exam. It ensures your thesis is still something you can write on the day and will therefore answer the question. Yeah, because these are different things that markers can frame questions from. Okay, ultimately though, it's what works best for you. My method was paragraphs and quote banks. I think, and this is my own bias, having a table, whether it be this exact table or a table, that might be tweaked a little bit, is the best way to study. in terms of while you're still learning about it, okay? Because obviously you can't start writing essay plans and full essays right now for Module A. You obviously haven't studied your text in class and you don't have much to talk about. As you study it, as you study your text, I would develop a notes table. You don't have to, but I'm biased and I love them, and I think that it's formatted nicely and it kind of mimics your paragraph structure as well, because think of it like this. This is like a concept statement. This is your evidence for your concept statement or your paragraph. This is your analysis, or these both are your analysis, and that's your audience effect, which you're basically building up to in your body paragraph. So when you memorize it, you memorize each row at a time for each argument. And then in the exam, when you're remembering the table, you're remembering it in the order of the way you'll write it. So it makes more sense to do it like that. All right. And this is an example of after you finish writing your practice, or after your practice writing, going through and marking all your main points and your main evidence that you used for memorization. This is another way you can do it. Again, as I said, I'm biased. All right, how I would prepare for Module A: cast aside all frustration and boredom and try to enjoy your text. Think critically about how the concepts of language, identity, and culture interact in the text. As I said, that's paramount. You need to have that. As many practice paragraphs and essays as you could bear. All right, let's start Module C now. All the Module C questions can start coming in now. We're also going to have some more practice like we did in the beginning-ish, where we did the images and we deconstructed them together and found some techniques in them. So get ready. We're going to have those coming as well, which are very fun because that's interactive. All right, so for Module C, you won't have, it is another common module, right? You will be doing essentially the same sort of stuff as English Advanced as well. So in Module C, you don't actually have just one prescribed text. It says there you'll be studying 2, but typically 3 is the golden number, okay? You'll look at 3 of these texts. Now, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, 3 texts, how are we going to handle 3 texts? You don't look at it in the same way you do for Common Mod, Mod A, Mod B. You're not going to write an essay just on these texts. You don't need to remember any quotes. Nessa have actually said you don't need to remember any quotes from your Module C text. They're really just there as inspiration, as we were talking about before. You really need to look at them and say, okay, I like how The Pedestrian by Ray Bradbury has used imagery. I want to mimic that, okay, and create imagery very similar to the way Bradbury did it. That's the kind of stuff you're doing. All right, so this is the rubric. Really, this is how Year 12 English works. The Common Mod is where you learn about human experiences, okay, and different experiences people have as part of being human. Mod A is building on top of that and saying, all right, human experiences then make an identity. You are basically the sum of all your experiences. That's your identity. Identities together, a bunch of identities together, form a culture, okay? And obviously we need to bring in language because this is English, and we need to look at the way, language can shape and reflect that. And then we go into Module B, where we start to look at really the how, I don't want to say the craft of writing because I don't want to confuse you guys, but how language is really being used to create meaning. We're looking at that in the Common Mod and Mod A, of course, but Mod B is really about form, okay? It's really, really about the construction of language on its own. Whereas Mod A especially Mod A is really about how language is doing, shaping and reflecting identity and culture. Mod B is really about the construction of language for meaning on its own. And then Mod C is basically Nessa really flipping it back on you and saying, all right, we've shown you all these different elements of the craft of writing. You show us you can do it now. And so that's basically what this rubric is saying, that you've learned all these different aspects of the craft of writing, such as how to use language to shape identities and culture, how to represent human experiences, motivations, emotions, feelings, and how to actually craft writing as per your study of Mod B. So now you need to do it. All right, what makes good creative writing? It recognizes and works with the economy of words. Each sentence should have significance and add meaning. It's also filled with different macro and micro techniques. So macro techniques are what I was talking about with form, things like setting, characterization, a motif happens all throughout the text. Micro techniques are what I was talking about, where they occur only on that one page, on that one line. Things like metaphor, as I keep saying. If you have believable and well-paced narrative frameworks, if you're judicious about dialogue, you have research behind it, it has intention and purpose. That's the biggest thing that I'm going to hone in on here. For Module C, it's so clear who has an intention and who has purpose in their writing and who doesn't. You need to have an intention before you start writing. And the best way to do that is have some pre-prepared purposes that you could talk about and you could use in your creative writing, and use them, when you can. Okay, this is an example of a creative piece, and you can see how this little extract does all of these things. Okay, I'm not going to read it out again. You guys can probably download, or you can download these slides, and when you download these slides, you can have a look at these. But yeah, as I said, it does everything that we just went through. Okay, biggest thing, hands down, for Module C, I'm going through the main things. I know I said the why, I spoke about that link. Now for Module C, for creative writing, the biggest thing is show, don't tell. This shouldn't be too shocking. We've heard this plenty of times before, but it's really the truth. So many students will just say, I don't know, yeah, Susie was cold, something like that. Instead of saying Susie was cold, tell me through dialogue. It's quite chilly outside, isn't it? Susie commented. So it's been revealed that Susie feels cold. Or by her actions, she wrapped the scarf around her neck like a boa constrictor. Okay? You've shown me that obviously she feels cold, so she's acted against that. All through the setting, an icy breeze circled the room. Standing right underneath the air conditioner, Susie shivered. Okay? So there are different ways you can show me and not just tell me. That's the biggest thing. That's what creates good writing. That's what's engaging as a marker. All right. What makes good discursive, persuasive, and informative writing? Because that's the other type of writing you'll be doing, not only creative writing. It has direction and an objective with a personal touch. It's writing about what you know and what you're confident in. It writes appropriately to audience, so it can be formal or informal depending on who your audience is. It has research and evidence to back up points, particularly if it's a persuasive. It has, again, intention and purpose, and that comes down to research and having your pre-prepared purposes, as I've been talking about. All right, this is a question I saw someone ask. How do we achieve better practice in writing? Drawing from a variety of influences and sources from inspiration. Emulating and transforming the stylistic features of other texts into our own, and striving to be more critical and reflective of our intention, purpose, and representations. A lot of people can easily get good ideas. Oh my gosh, sorry guys, I'm going to have a drink of water. Oh goodness. A lot of people can get good ideas really easily. It's mostly just the writing part and people struggle with. So something that I used to do to help me improve my creative writing is Google, and I know I've mentioned this in a previous lecture, so hopefully I'll repeat it for you guys that maybe you don't remember, or maybe you didn't go to those lectures. I would Google literary techniques glossary, and you can literally find, I think Matrix Education has one. There's heaps online of just like literally like a dictionary or a glossary of heaps of different literary techniques. And what I would do is basically say, all right, let me pick out this technique, and this technique. And I'm going to write for 5 minutes an introduction to a piece, to a creative piece. And I'm going to use those 3 different micro techniques. Even though they might be really small and I only use them once, it's still giving me practice with them, and it's still improving my writing. And yes, we do want to see those big macro techniques in your writing, but truly the students that do better are the ones that also have those small, really hidden, subtle literary devices as well. So that would be a big tip that I would say to improve your writing. And use your prescribed texts for Module C. Don't worry too much about this now because obviously you haven't really looked at them in depth. But when you start to look at your Mod C text, look at the way they write and what you could emulate from them. Look at different text types, poems, letters, diary entries to draw from more inspiration as you write. If you're struggling to come up with ideas, think about current issues and what you think is worth voicing. And also, there is a website that I used all the time, and I can't believe I didn't write it down here. I think it's like Pebbles 365, or it's something called that. But there are a bunch of different websites like this. It's basically a creative artwork generator, and it generates a random artwork. And another thing I used to do is generate a random artwork, set a timer for 10 minutes, and write a creative based on the artwork. Whether it be something that it inspired in me conceptually, so it's not necessarily that my characters are in the setting, it's reminded me of something and then I want to talk about that, or I'm bringing my characters into the setting, or I've used it to come up with a character. Whatever it may be, it helped me get inspiration and think of different ideas. So even there are now those like AI art generator things, something like that you could definitely use. Or another thing I used to do is like literally Google artwork about loneliness, and then like the same thing, set a timer and write about the artwork. Like a creative piece based on the artwork, or even discursive piece. Those are other things that I did as well, and that's a good way to come up with ideas. All right. Do be aware of the believability of your writing. Maintain control over the voice and tone of the speakers in your piece. Yes. Don't have a shift randomly of the way your character speaks or even the way the character behaves. Have alternate endings, plot points, setting, perspectives. Yeah, don't go in with one story. Have different stories pre-prepared that you can bend and you can change the ending depending on what you're being asked about. Also have a perspective, aka have a purpose. You must be trying to teach your reader about something or show them something that they haven't seen before. Okay, so you have to have a perspective. You cannot just be writing aimlessly. Your marker is really craving that authorial intent from you. Don't write something that goes nowhere, as I was just saying, and write with no message or purpose. Okay, that fits into what I was saying really nicely. You must have a purpose. Okay, my best tip for success, practice. You guys aren't going to believe it. Practice theses, essay plans, and writing whole essays. I know it's what no one likes to hear, it's the annoying stuff, but yeah, you really have to. You have to do the practice and get feedback. Not just write aimlessly, get feedback and then learn from the feedback and rewrite certain things. Okay, my best tip for success, force yourself to write something a fortnight, even if it's just a body paragraph. Remember, as I said, a body paragraph a day keeps the band 4s away. Use the rubric. It's one giant essay question generator. Use practice questions available on the forums, on ACE HSC, on HR Notes, on Matrix, on your Facebook group for your 2023 now. Oh my gosh, HSC. All that stuff will give you practice questions. Most importantly, do not leave your study to the last minute. Yes, okay. Your notes, as I said, for the common mod need to be done by the time you get to school. So if that's you, if you're right now thinking, oh, am I not done? Get them done. Do not leave it to the last minute, because trust me, by the time trial comes, you're not going to have time. You're going to be rushing. It's going to be horrible for you if you don't have your notes done and your essay plans and your evidence not finalized. Think about it like this: you'll be behind everyone. Everyone will be, yep, already have all my notes done. Now I just need to revise and study. You'll be trying to play catch up. Okay, so it's really hard to do well when your peers are going to be so far ahead. So get it done now. All right, my favorite time, we are now going to be doing another one of those technique poll thingies. Let me just do this. Okay, tell me what techniques you see in this image. I'm sorry about the watermark. I really tried to get it off, but every single thing had the watermark over it. So the watermark's not a technique. The part that says flakes, art flakes, I think that says, that's not a technique. It's not text. It's literally just the watermark. So apart from that, I want you guys to tell me some techniques you can see in this image. I'll give you guys a few minutes because I know this is delayed. Focal point, nice. Salience, body language, contrast. Positioning. Salience is really big. Body language is good. Yep, contrast, focal point. Gaze, or a lack of gaze. Yeah, that's really good. To whoever said that, well done. Gaze, you can talk about, but also a lack of gaze could also have an effect. Image. Okay, again, guys, remember, for visual pieces like this, you can't really use imagery. Facial expression, good. Loneliness isn't a technique, but it's definitely could be the intended effect being created here. Focal point, texture, nice. Reading path. Oh, it's going crazy. Shadows. Framing. Hue, nice. Vector lines, nice. Cool. Okay, anything else? There's still some people typing. What about, this is something no one has said, what do we, how can I say this without giving it away? There's something you can also talk about that has to do with the subject, okay? Remember, when you're talking about a person in an image or a painting or whatever, you don't call them, the boy, you say the subject. What else about him? So yes, you said body language, you said a lack of gaze. Here it might not have the greatest effect, but how do we know he's a modern boy? How do we know he's not from, 1200 BC? What about him tells us that he's modern? Okay. Is there anything anyone can think of? Or how do we even know that he's not from 200 years ago? There's something really distinct about him. It's not the biggest thing here, but I just want to draw your eye to it because it can be really important in other visual texts. Let's see if anyone said it. Yes, costuming, good. Costuming is also another visual technique. Please don't forget that. Yeah, here it's not really, you could say that he's kind of like draped over in all these clothes, like his pants are full length and they don't expose any of them, so it's almost like confining him or helping like hug him and make him feel more comfortable. You could argue something like that, but here it's not the biggest thing. There are definitely some texts where it's more important to talk about. So I just wanted to draw your eye to it. Okay, now everyone's saying clothing. Okay, good guys, good. All right, let's move on to this one. Let me make the new poll. Cool. All right, what techniques can we see here? Also, guys, while you're doing this, these would be a great study resource if you want to maybe write a short answer question about these and then answer it. This is also another thing I did. I would give myself images like this, and I would break down literary techniques that I can see, or visual techniques in this case, that I could see in the text and write out the intended effect. So for something like this, I'll steal something that someone's already said. Gaze, okay. Maybe not gaze. I'll use color. And I could say that it's trying to show us, the dreariness or the fearfulness of reading, how it can present us with maybe things that are shocking and dreary, okay? Let's say that's my main idea. That's how the composer has used the role of storytelling to tell me that. That's that why. I could say that's my main idea, and then let's say I was studying, I could say, okay, the use of color shows us that. The color is unpleasant and uncomfortable to the reader. And that proves what I was saying about storytelling presenting us with something that we, find shocking or uncomfortable, the uncomfortable use of color. That's what I would do. And I'd literally just jot down as many visual techniques as I could for this image. Then I would find a random blog post, even if it was like a travel blog post or something, and find in what the person has written as many literary techniques as I could. And that works especially if you're someone who struggles finding literary techniques. Have a literary technique glossary up in front of you, like I was talking about before, and try to find those specific techniques in stuff that you're practicing with. Even if you get the newspaper, if you look at, like, I don't know, Daily Telegraph newspaper today, you find a little excerpt from something about, I don't know, the sports or daily news or whatever it may be, and you find the literary techniques in there just to help train you and coach you to become better at finding literary techniques. That's another thing I would do. You don't necessarily have to be writing out full short answer responses. It's good, of course, and you do want to do that, but that's just something else you can do. And I would also do that with my friends, so that we could kind of all get better and I could see their ideas and maybe learn about techniques I'd never seen before. Okay. Vectors, color, salience, good, color contrast, personification, foreground, negative connotations. See, now negative connotations it isn't really a visual technique. You might say that a symbol has negative connotations, but in itself, it's not really a negative, like it's not a visual technique to say this is a negative connotation. Whereas you can say this is symbolism and it stands for negative connotations. Color, good, dull colors, reading path again, position, juxtaposition, good, composition, foreground and the lack of a foreground, that's really nice. Color contrast, shadow, good, nice. All right, I'll give you guys like 2 more minutes if there's anything else that anyone else wants to add. Let me see if I can think of anything else. Oh, there's another one that no one has said yet, I don't think. What do we call it? So someone said foreground and background. What does that create for the image? When we feel like it's 3D and it's almost like there's layers to it, what does that create for the viewer? It creates something to the image. Rhetoric, no. So rhetoric would be with us, like, any kind of dialogue or writing, or it has to be written for rhetoric. So just be careful with rhetoric. Distance is close, it's good, and you could probably argue it as the effect, but there's a technique. Not quite distance. What might it be? Really close though. Depth. Okay, good. Someone said depth. Depth is another one you could talk about here. We almost feel like she's coming for us, okay? She's reaching out of the foreground and she's reaching out of the background and coming to the foreground, okay, where it's empty. So there's that depth that makes us feel frightened, that makes us feel intimidated. And that's really good. Okay, cool. All right. I'll leave it there. I'm going to stop that one. But that was really good. This one I really enjoyed. All right, we have one more. I'm going to do this for like a minute. Oh, no. Why is that? Okay, I might have to do Okay, sorry. I think it's working now. It didn't work initially. I'll see if I start seeing your responses pop through. But what techniques can we see in this one? This one might be a little bit harder. This one we're only going to spend a minute or two on. While you're doing that, I will say that if you're ever presented with an image like this, where there are different kind of moments in the text, you would want to refer to these as scenes, okay? So the scene of the top left-hand corner, the central scene in the top hand, or the top section of the page. You want to talk about positioning as well. You want to talk about scenes. Low angle. Okay, positioning might be better because it's not a camera shot, but positioning might be better for that. Framing, satire, okay, visual techniques, guys. Keep it to visual techniques. Irony and satire, yes, that's the effect. And I know the question still says intended effect, so I completely understand that. But try to keep it to visual techniques. Color. Yeah, again, irony would be an effect, not a visual technique. Facial expression, good. Symbolism, repetition in the symbolism would be good. Vector, good. Okay, not dialogue. Refer to it as text. Okay, text. Good. Another thing, just quickly, be mindful of when you say symbolism, it's always a good idea to describe the type of symbolism. So here you could say something like mythical symbolism. If you're referring to someone, describe this as like a godlike figure, you could say the mythical symbolism. Here you could say, I don't know, there's a specific word that I'm looking for. We could say the symbolism of intimidation. We could say something like that. Here we could say the mental symbolism, right? So always try to describe the symbolism. Same thing, always try to describe the imagery, okay? I know I haven't given you any written text, but don't ever just say imagery is being used. What kind of imagery? Is it visual imagery, olfactory imagery, tactile imagery, which means touch? Tell me the different types of imagery.